I spent some time this week looking at two separate emerging technologies that I think are probably related, especially as applies to education. The first was next generation presentation tools. That's the one I looked at the most in depth, but I also spent some time looking at lecture capture tools. First, for presentation tools, I looked at SlideShare, which seems to be fairly similar to Google Docs presentation tool in that it's still a slide-based PowerPoint-like presentation tool, but it's stored online and it's accessible by several people, so that it might be a good tool for collaborative presentation type projects. The second one that I looked at for presentation tool is called Prezi, and that's a completely different type of tool. It's completely, everything is all on a single canvas. It's not organized at all by slides. It's actually organized visually. There's a hierarchy that can be created by changing the size of the object on the canvas. It can embed YouTube videos, photos, graphics, and then also different types of text information. The presenter can then zoom in or out to get in on details or out for higher level concepts or to create a completely visual picture of an overview. Navigation patterns can be predefined, but the user can zoom out and back in without having to flip through elements, so they can navigate a little bit more flexibly than in a standard slide after slide presentation. I actually used Prezi to try and create a presentation of my own that I had needed to create just to see how it worked. And I found it to be interesting, very visually appealing, but if you aren't careful, it can get a little bit dizzying to zoom in and out and around and not be able to tell where you've been and where you're going. It took me a little while to get the hang of it, but I still think it's a valuable tool. I think it could be actually pretty cool to use for educational information. To get to the educational application part of it, I can see it being really useful to keep students' attention. It's not slide after slide after slide of the same basic stuff. So you can actually keep their attention better potentially. I see it being better for perhaps overview presentations or conference type, roundtable type presentations. I'm not certain that a lot of information can be presented, but I haven't spent enough time with it to figure out if that's possible or not. It just seems that it might get a little bit confusing. It seems to me that nowadays many instructors put a lot of information on their slides, which admittedly isn't considered best practice for presentations in general. To load up information on the slide, it's best to say it instead of have it both on the screen and being said. But that seems to be the case anyway. Students also tend to use the information on the slides as their notes for that class. Instead of just looking at it as a presentation, it's actually all the information they're supposed to get out of class that day. So in a format like Prezi, where there's less text and more kind of movement around the screen, it might be difficult to capture notes for really information-rich presentations. Not necessarily a reason not to use it, it just means that we have to figure out, students and instructors, different methods for documenting the details that are mentioned in the presentation, which is what led me to look at lecture capture tools a little bit more. The simplest form of lecture capture tools is an audio recording like podcasting, but then it can get really more complex up to things like Camtasia Relay or MediaSite that record not only audio but video, cursor movement, typing, and all of that with the voiceover so everything is synced together. There are also tools like SmartPens that will record the audio going along at the same time as a student is taking notes, so that a student can actually touch that point in their notes and hear what was going on at the lecture at that point in time. So it seems to me that a combination of some of these new presentation type tools in combination with the lecture capture may be a good solution for trying to be interesting visually for a presentation, but also have the detailed information captured and available to students to either review or clarify a confusing concept or something like that. So overall, I think that they are promising tools. We still just have to figure out the best applications for education.